All right, good morning. Welcome to the Ohio Clean Energy Summit, Local Communities Lead. I'm meteorologist Matt Standard. I'm one of the meteorologists for WKYC, an NBC station in Cleveland. I'm very excited to be with you guys today, and I want to thank you for joining us. We're very excited to have leaders from across Ohio and across the Midwest join this groundbreaking event to build Ohio's clean energy future through local action. Today's event is co-hosted by Power a Clean Future Ohio and the Office of Mayor John Cranley, City of Cincinnati. Supporting organizations, the Ohio Mayor's Alliance, the Ohio Environmental Council, and the Ohio Conservative Energy Forum. And also, we'd like to thank our platinum sponsor, Hecate Energy, for their support of the summit and their belief in collaborative, long-term partnerships with the clients and communities they serve. Big shout out to them. And thank you also to our gold sponsors, Bricker and Eckler, and the Utility Scale Solar Energy Coalition of Ohio. And thank you to our silver sponsors, Third Sun Solar and Yellow Light. All right, Power a Clean Future is Ohio is changing every local leader across the state to commit to reducing their community's carbon emissions. The organization is encouraging elected officials to take the pledge to support this work in their local city. Mayor Cranley has been tirelessly encouraging his colleagues, fellow mayors, to take action. And to kick us off, we have a message from Mayor Cranley from Cincinnati, our streaming location for today's summit. Mayor Cranley.
Hi, I'm John Cranley, Mayor of Cincinnati. Welcome to the Ohio Clean Energy Summit. This is a very exciting summit where we want all of you to commit to reduce 30% of your carbon footprint by 2030. 30% by 2030. You can do this. You can do this. Our kids and grandkids are depending on you doing this, but it also requires action. You do not have to pay a premium to reduce your carbon footprint by 30% by 2030. Trust me, I'm doing it. By the end of 2021, Cincinnati will be 100% carbon neutral because we are building the largest solar array in the country. We'll put as much clean energy on the grid as the city government uses annually. So we will do 100 megawatts of clean energy, which isn't just 30%, it's 100% of what the city consumes annually. We are not paying up or a premium for this solar array. We're in fact going to save money over the life of the contract because it's going to be a diversified solution for just the city government and our residents. But if every institution in Ohio, including your local governments, did an equivalent project, we could reduce the carbon footprint and increase renewable energy sources in Ohio by 30%. Just think about what that would mean for our air, for our water. And when I started that pledge, I assumed, like so many others, and probably you, that to meet this goal, I would have to pay up. The taxpayers would have to lose to meet a moral goal. The fact is, for a 30% reduction, that's just not the case. And you may want to go further. And you obviously have the right to do that. But the question is, will you at least do the 30%? We're about to break ground in Highland County on a solar project that is literally 1,000 acres, 750 football fields. This project will put 130 electricians to work, making a median income of $62,000 a year. Our private partner is an African-American owned business. Good wages, prevailing wages, pension benefits, and diversity can and should be part of your clean energy strategy. But equally important is reducing the carbon footprint and making things happen. You can do this. You can join our efforts. You can start your own efforts. Whatever it takes. But please don't just commit to a slogan. Commit to a course of action. I am here to help you. Call me. Reach out. We'll share everything we've been through. So please pledge 30% reduction by 2030 and then follow up in actions. I know you can do it. We're doing it. You can do it too.
All right, that was Mayor Cranley, and we appreciate that. The shots at Cincinnati look really good too. Hey, so next we'd like to introduce someone very important, someone who's been working very hard to put everything together. I'd like to introduce Joe Flaherty, the Executive Director of Power a Clean Future Ohio. So Joe has been instrumental in putting today's summit together, in addition to spearheading ongoing advocacy efforts across Ohio. For those of you who may be unfamiliar with Joe and Power Clean Future Ohio, as the name applies, the organization is focused on building momentum now for Ohio's clean energy future. To do this, their work helps equip local leaders for equitable, community-driven carbon reductions in Ohio through nonpartisan advocacy, organizing, and technical assistance. As Joe will tell you, the solar, wind, electric vehicle, and energy-efficient industries are booming, yet new data shows that Ohio now ranks as the nation's third largest carbon emitter. Got Texas, California, but then we're right behind that, third. A high ranking that we can't be proud of, and that has real consequences for the health and well-being of our Ohio residents. Now more than ever, our local efforts to reduce the state's carbon footprint are needed. So Joe is going to provide a great overview of how we got here and where we're going. Joe?
Well, thank you so much, Matt, and thanks for being here with us today. It is a privilege to be here today to recognize the work of Ohio's local leaders and the opportunities that are ahead of us. As we have heard from several great panel discussions over the past 3 days, this global challenge we face can indeed be solved locally. The incredible progress we will hear about over the next hour has been driven by hardworking Ohioans that want to see progress, justice, and economic stability in our state. It is inspired by Ohio's unique history of innovation and ingenuity, and the need to plan for a better future for our families, including the one my wife and I are starting any day now. Literally at 9 months pregnant. If she calls me in the next 90 minutes, I may have to duck out early, so please forgive me. Our unique stories, our lived experiences, are the why behind this work, and I'm proud to be a part of it. I grew up in Lima, Ohio, a community that has counted on the oil and gas industry for jobs to put food on the table for many Lima families. The local revenue from that industry funds schools, roads, and community programs. There is no doubt that the oil industry boom built Lima. But what comes next for my hometown, the next source of jobs and stability, isn't always so clear. The story of Lima is not unique in Ohio. For generations, many other Ohio communities have had their economic well-being staked on the fossil fuel industry, be it in coal mining, oil and gas production, or power generation, filled with market ups and downs and perpetual uncertainty. Through many friends and relatives, I can say with certainty that there is dignity and honor in that work for each person that has built their life and supported their families in those jobs. But our next chapter as Ohioans will be built on a new wave of technology and innovation. It is building new cities today and saving old ones all across the country. In the US, solar and wind are quickly outpacing the stagnant old forms of energy that use limited resources with major environmental consequences. Electric vehicles are proving to be safer, better for the environment, and less expensive to operate and maintain. Innovation that grows our economy, saves us money, and could very well save our planet is emerging every day if we only have the sense to embrace it instead of fight it. Today, we stand on the edge of real change. Change that can be difficult but rewarding for Ohio's future. The story we will tell tomorrow is built on clean energy, clean transportation, good paying jobs, and a safe environment. Today's story starts with each of us coming together to write the chapters we want the next generation to read and be proud of. Our story includes our work at Power Clean Future Ohio in helping local communities put pen to page. But most importantly, it starts with inspiring our future authors, each of you, to start writing. Now, it is clear that to write a story we are proud of, we have a lot of work to do. But we'd be remiss to not recognize and celebrate those who have built the foundation in their communities for Ohio's clean energy future. Over the past year, I've been honored to speak with PCFO community leaders and clean energy champions that lead with the urgency of now and the clear vision of a future that provides their residents clean air, clean water, and good-paying jobs. Several of these cities and their elected representatives have made the Ohio 30 by 30 pledge, showing their support for our collective work in reducing emissions in big and small ways across our state. Some have even taken the pledge further by committing to carbon neutrality by 2050 or setting near-term goals of moving their city to 100% clean energy sources. In addition to pledges, I would also like to recognize the cities that have came to the table over the past year to launch this work and the statewide network. Power Clean Future Ohio's 14 founding cities have led by example. Here are some of the things that they've accomplished to date. As we just heard, our very first PCFO community, Cincinnati, is on track to reduce carbon emissions by 80% by 2050. The city just broke ground last week on the largest municipal solar array in the country. The city's comprehensive approach to climate action and clean energy is a model to replicate in other cities. Athens has served as a leader in Ohio and Appalachia on climate action and clean energy solutions. In 2019, Athens residents voted in favor of adding a carbon fee to electric bills that will help fund local solar projects. The city is working with us on expanding city EV adoption and assessing annual emissions through a PCFO greenhouse gas inventory. Dayton recently adopted the Sierra Club's Ready for 100 commitment, and last year the city transitioned the municipal buildings to 100% clean energy. The city administration is also pursuing a community-wide 100% clean energy agreement through a relaunch of the Community Choice Aggregation Program. Lakewood is on a path to provide 100% clean energy for all government operations by 2025, if not sooner, and community-wide by 2035. The city has added over 0.5 megawatt of solar power to city buildings, becoming a model for other cities interested in pursuing on-site solar projects. Lancaster is making small changes that make a big difference, including a comprehensive transition to LED lighting to reduce energy waste. The city has also opened its first EV charging station in the heart of its revitalized downtown. Silverton has implemented a number of financially smart emission reduction strategies, most notably creating a net zero building through solar installation and efficiency upgrades to their town hall. Euclid is building sustainability planning into the city's long-term strategy. The city has led the way with the installation of solar panels on top of the public library and city hall to meet the energy needs of government operations and reduce carbon by 150 tons per year. Lorraine has taken many steps to become a more sustainable community, including offering a PACE loan program to help property owners finance energy efficiency and renewable energy projects. Reynoldsburg has tackled energy waste reduction by upgrading their local school facilities to make them more efficient. They are working with PCFO and Clean Fuels Ohio to buy electric and drive electric locally. Lima is also pursuing a strategy around electric vehicles by embracing EV-friendly local policies for the community. The city is also utilizing the Clean Fuels Ohio to analyze their fleet and deploy more electric vehicles. Bexley has committed to a big goal of reaching zero waste by 2040. We are honored to partner with the city as they pursue climate action planning and consider electric aggregation for residential clean energy. Warren, Ohio committed to the Ohio 30 by 30 pledge, and with Mayor Franklin's leadership is aiming to reduce the city's carbon emissions by 30% by 2030. The city has worked with the Nature Conservancy on the revitalization of local green space to create a healthier, more sustainable community. On the shores of Lake Erie, Sandusky prides itself as a walkable city with access to the water, green space, and excellent public parks. The city is working to integrate clean energy and climate action into the city's long-term planning, which, as we know, can have major impacts on the health of the lake. Portsmouth is the most recent addition to the PCFO founding communities. The City Council adopted a resolution to put community choice aggregation on the ballot in November to move the city to 100% renewable energy. We look forward to continuing our work with each of our PCFO communities and encourage others to join our network. We will see more examples of the great work happening across the state dispersed within the program today. Join us in celebrating the city's accomplishments and continuing the conversation on Twitter with hashtag Ohio 30 by 30 or hashtag locals lead the way.
That are showing change happening right now and going into the future. Also, if you're in Ohio, you're lucky because we've got sunshine and 80s. It's great weather. In fact, we have some of the best weather in the Midwest for today. All right, so we're going to move on. We have our next two speakers. They're here to talk about why a clean energy transition is so critical to the health and well-being of communities. So today we're joined by Dr. Aparna Bol, a pediatric physician and medical director at Rainbow Babies and Children's Hospital, and then Dr. Shelley Francis, the executive director of EV Hybrid Noir. My question for both of you is, what motivates you to advocate on this work, and how do you see it impacting the communities that are most vulnerable? Dr. Bol, we'll start with you.
Thank you. Good morning. The reason that I care so much about clean energy in Ohio is because as a pediatrician, I see the impacts of air pollution and climate change on my patients every single day. I think people sometimes think about sort of future benefits around climate action that may benefit another time and place. And we don't always appreciate how much air pollution and climate change are already affecting the health of our citizens right now here in Ohio. And as a primary care doctor, taking care of kids, I see how children are disproportionately affected from air pollution and climate change here in Cleveland. And furthermore, minoritized communities, those who have experienced discrimination, marginalization, and economic disadvantage are disproportionately affected as well. In fact, just this week, my professional organization, the American Academy of Pediatrics, published a new policy statement on the effects of air pollution on infants and children. I think a lot of people, when we imagine the effects of air pollution on kids, we think about asthma, and yeah, that is a big issue. Air pollution can both cause and exacerbate chronic lung conditions like asthma. Asthma is a huge issue in Cleveland and all of our cities in Ohio. Over 1 in 5 kids in my city are affected by asthma, and asthma is a condition that's twice as prevalent among African American kids as white children. But asthma is not the only health effect of air pollution on kids, far from it. We're learning more and more every day about impacts of air pollution on issues like birth outcomes, on healthy brain development, on lifelong cardiovascular risk. In my field, we talk a lot about pediatric public health crises in cities in Ohio, including the infant mortality crisis, children who don't make it to their first birthday. We talk about issues like school readiness. What are we doing to make sure that we're promoting healthy development for our youngest children? And I would argue we really shouldn't be talking about infant mortality and healthy birth outcomes or school readiness and healthy brain development without also talking about clean air. It's an integral part of supporting healthy birth outcomes and healthy brains in our youngest children. So the way that I would frame our opportunity around clean energy is that solutions around clean energy are also child health solutions. They have immediate health benefits to the health of our children. It's an investment in our future in the most immediate possible way. They lead to better birth outcomes, better young lung health, and healthier neurodevelopment in our children. As I mentioned, these impacts are not equitable, right? So in the United States, we know that race is the best predictor of exposure to air pollution, with Black Americans being disproportionately affected. That is true here in Ohio. And we also have some of the starkest examples of health disparities in the entire country in cities like Cleveland. Thinking about issues like birth outcomes, the disparity between Black and white infant mortality is astonishing and really outrageous in cities like Cleveland. Environmental determinants of those outcomes have got to be part of our conversation to find solutions. That's just one of the reasons why no region in the entire country really stands to benefit more than ours from investment in clean energy. There have been some great data around this topic. There was a study not too long ago from the Harvard School of Public Health that looked at calculating returns on investment in different regions in the country, clean energy investment. So looking at returns in terms of economic and health benefits of clean energy investment. And no region in the country had more impressive return on investment projected in terms of economic and health benefits than the Great Lakes, including Ohio. So I think we have a great sort of argument to make for the urgency of clean energy investment. I frame it as a child health imperative, as a health equity imperative. And I think that we all have an opportunity as advocates for accelerating our transition to clean energy to really explain it that way, that this is a public health imperative and that we need to be incorporating the consideration of health benefits as we consider the return on investment for clean energy investments here in our cities and in our state.
Thank you, Dr. Bol. Thank you for pointing out how important it is for our children. We're going to get back to you in just a second, but we also have Dr. Shelley Francis, once again, the executive director of EV Hybrid Noir. And I'm going to have the same question for you. What motivates you to advocate on this work, and how are you seeing it impact the communities that are most vulnerable?
Good morning, and thank you for that question, Matt. I'm glad to be here with everyone this morning. So, I'm going to share my personal story and the reasons why we do the work. And so, I'll start off by just telling you a little bit about who we are. So, EV Hybrid Noir is the nation's largest network of diverse EV drivers and enthusiasts. And our mission is to advance EVs and multimodal transportation in a way that is equitable and inclusive. And so, our focus is accelerating this conversation in the Midwest and nationwide. So as the voice of EV drivers and enthusiasts, our work falls into three buckets. We directly engage with communities that are often left out of e-mobility discussions. We advocate for e-mobility solutions in underserved communities, and we work to shift the narrative around e-mobility to be more exclusive of diverse populations. I'm a former medical school professor, shout out to Case Western, and I approach transportation electrification from a public health lens. So millions of Americans who live near highways and other traffic corridors, which are often communities of color and underserved communities, they suffer from asthma and respiratory ailments at higher rates than other communities, in large part because of air pollution from vehicles. So e-mobility has tremendous potential to help address that, but only if these communities have access to electric cars, buses, as well as other e-mobility solutions, along with the prerequisite education and outreach that is needed to normalize this paradigm shifts, and so that they can see themselves utilizing this technology. And at the core of our work is the understanding of how people get from point A to point B in this country is historically intertwined with issues of race, equity, and justice. So be it how Black communities were literally torn apart with the interstate highway system being built in the middle of their communities, or how having a car is a prerequisite to having a job in many rural and suburban communities, mobility and equity are linked in a myriad of ways. So we always begin our discussions with this conversation around transportation electrification with giving that context, because we have to learn from the past and present in order to really ensure that this transition to transportation electrification is a just transition, and it involves and benefits all communities, especially those communities that are hit first and worst by air pollution and climate change.
And thank you, Dr. Francis. To follow up with that, from what Dr. Bull shared, especially focusing on children, have you seen any of that reflected in your work?
Oh, absolutely. Like she shared, the data doesn't lie. And our work is data driven. So we know that Black and Latinx children and adults are disproportionately impacted by respiratory illnesses. And then the same population are disproportionately impacted by chronic diseases that are associated with overexposure to air pollution and particle emission. So one of the ways that we can actually mitigate the impact of that is to really transition everything over to electrified transportation. So whether we're talking about scooters and e-bikes, single occupancy vehicles, medium heavy duty freight, we know that that makes a difference. And we just have some really excellent data recently that shows that different communities, so different racial and ethnic groups and rural communities are impacted in different ways in terms of being overexposed to pollution. So some communities are more prone to be exposed to vehicle and transportation emissions or medium and heavy duty truck, and some communities are more prone to be exposed to industrial pollution. So we have some of the tools that we need to really address some of these issues.
And Dr. Francis, like you just mentioned, certain communities are impacted more, and sometimes we've done studies in the meteorological community, and a lot of it has to do with the wind. Of course, the prevailing wind over Ohio is out of the west. And so if you think where those steel yards are, different factories are, a lot of times some of the underserved communities are just east. And so that pollution goes directly right towards them. And so, Dr. Bull, thinking about that and talking with Dr. Francis today, what makes you think about the impact that you can personally have as a physician?
Yeah, I think clinicians have a unique opportunity to tell the stories of the health impacts we're seeing in our practice every day. We really see sort of like those human impacts on the children in our care, in my case, children in my care. And I think lifting up those stories to really help the public and policymakers understand that the issue of clean energy, clean transportation, those aren't sort of abstract issues that relate to sort of, an industry that we may not know much about, or it's an environmental issue. No, it's really a health issue that affects our families, our children, our neighbors, our the people that we care about. So I think that telling the stories of health impacts in our practice is sort of a really, I think, a unique opportunity for those of us in clinical practice, and an increasing number of us, especially, I'm proud to say, my fellow pediatricians are really engaging in that work. And I think that as policy advocates, to really frame clean energy as a public health imperative, we know actually data shows that messaging around health and clean energy resonates in a way that can break down sort of traditional political barriers. It can sort of depoliticize an issue that sometimes becomes sort of hyperpartisan. When messaging around clean energy and climate action has really been tested across segments of the population, that health message is what resonates, I think, the most. And we have a unique position to be able to convey that in our position as clinicians.
Dr. Bull, Dr. Francis, thank you for your time and thank you for your insight. All right, so
Thank you.
thank you. Speaking of community, here's a glimpse into the Dayton community and their clean energy efforts. So many cities are looking to take steps towards a clean future, but are unsure where to start. Today's program, we're featuring experts answering the tough questions our leaders are facing, like what's environmental justice and how can local government approach this within meaningful local policy changes? Racially marginalized and economically disadvantaged communities often lack environmental equity. This includes far and just as access to healthy, breathable air and drinkable water. The first step to addressing these issues is to have honest, deliberate conversation about racism and injustice in our communities and recognize the important role we have in addressing these issues. Jennifer Sconyers, an equity coach coordinator with PCFO and the Abundance Leadership Consulting, is going to be sharing how we can join together to address issues of sustainability along with racial equity, access to resources, and representation on the local level. Jennifer leads the PSCFO's Free Equity Coaching for Sustainable Cities program, which provides cities and local governments. The program includes access to 4 hours of equity coaching, fully funded greenhouse gas inventory or fleet inventory, and expert policy recommendations that are equitable, actionable, and affordable. The program is a great personal and professional development opportunity for leaders and their staff. Of course, if you're interested in learning more about this program, visit poweracleanfuture.org/equity coaching. All right, thank you for joining us, Jennifer.
It's good to be here. Thank you so much. Well, I want to give just a couple of minutes just to really share some details about the equity coaching program with you all, some of the impacts that we have in mind with this program, and leave with some ways to get engaged. So when looking at the equity coaching program, which is brand spanking new, we're so excited about it, there are some impacts that we're thinking about. So we're looking at 10 Ohio cities in our inaugural class, and taking equitable and just actions to reduce their carbon footprints by 30% by 2030. We're looking at community leaders who are directly engaging with their frontline communities and bringing voices to the table who had not previously been included. We're recruiting communities for participation, resulting in at least 5 new cities taking action by joining the Power a Clean Future Ohio campaign and committing to reduce emissions and grow the clean energy economy locally. Each participating community has created a deliberative, analytical approach to incorporating equity and justice in their local policy implementation that is applicable, to not just local energy policy or climate action, but to all areas of government. Communities adopt through legislation at the city level or county commission level equity-based solutions to climate change. And communities that receive equity coaching share examples of local legislation that seeks to fill gaps in inequity and systemic injustices and develop champions for equity in each government that we work with. So those are our program impacts for equity coaching. And really in this program, as mentioned earlier, we're looking at a focus on racial equity and racial justice in the work. So that is a focus of the program. And also knowing that we're tailoring it to your city's needs. So while we have a coaching framework, we want to make sure that we are tailoring it to what you need based on what's happening in your community. So how to get involved? It's super simple, just a few steps. So the first thing to do is to sign up. So we have an equity coaching and GHG inventory program, very lengthy name, I know, interest form. The link is right, you can find it. And the form asks some really important questions about you and what you're looking for in an equity coach and program. So that supports us in knowing if your needs are fit for this program. Also, we'll ask you to be a PCFO city. So that's also something that's important for us too, that the cities who enroll in this program who are chosen are also a PCFO city. And once we review your intake form, we're going to reach out to you and schedule an intake call. So this is a way for us to best prepare, and set up your equity coaching experience to ensure it's high value for you. And after that, we connect you with your coach. So it's really simple and easy. We want you to be involved. If you have any questions, there's a link for information that's been provided to you. So thank you so much for having me.
Helping our local governments as they continue to tackle and to help hold their hands as we continue to move forward. All right, so when businesses, workers, and government are on the same page, we can achieve incredible progress. Our next conversation is answering the question, what does this moment mean for Ohio's workers? We are inviting business leaders Jeff Greenfield from Third Sun Solar and Rick Fisher, the business manager for the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 212, to share their personal testimonies about how clean energy is a transformational opportunity for Ohio's workers and businesses. Thank you for joining us, Jeff and Rick, today. I would like to start by having you both share your personal story and how it connects to the theme about climate means jobs. I want to ask you what excites you about the opportunity ahead of us in clean energy for Ohio's workers and businesses. Jeff, I'll start with you.
Super. Thanks, Matt, and thanks to the whole team at this summit. It's fantastic so far. I started Third Sun Solar in Athens, Ohio 21 years ago, just primarily focused on the technology and helping households go solar. And I had no idea how quickly solar would turn into a leading energy technology and grow so to where it is today. We are hiring at Third Sun as the demand increases. We're hiring electricians, we're hiring salespeople, we're hiring educators and accountants and administrative staffers all over the place. And we're also working with more and more subcontracted companies to do bigger and bigger projects. We're working with the IBEW on some big projects in Toledo, Ohio right now, for example, that are our largest projects ever. Very exciting times. Our industry is growing by leaps and bounds, and so it's a great place for people to work in a job that can't be exported to other states, can't be exported to other countries, and it's very exciting.
Thank you, Jeff. All right, Rick, your turn.
Thanks, Matt. Mayor Cranley, Power a Clean Future Ohio, the Ohio's Mayor Alliance, Ohio Environmental Council, and the Ohio Conservative Energy Forum. Thanks for having me with you today. My name is Rick Fisher. I'm the business manager of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 212 here in Cincinnati, Ohio. The IBW represents over 775,000 skilled members internationally. Over 20,000 of these individuals reside in Ohio and work in a wide variety of industries, including utilities, construction, telecommunication, broadcasting, manufacturing, rail, and government. The IBW is always appreciative of an opportunity to talk about the future of energy generation and jobs for Ohioans. I'm a journeyman wireman, which in non-industry terms is what most people think when they think of an electrician. I was trained in the IBW apprenticeship program. The program is entirely privately funded and is an earn while you learn. I completed the program debt-free in 1992. After my apprenticeship, I worked on a variety of construction projects, ranging from nursing homes, commercial store remodels, the Northern Kentucky Convention Center across the river, just to name a few. I spent the last 12 years before I became business manager of the local at the Miami Fort Generating Station in North Bend, Ohio, as the general foreman there. I learned a lot about coal burning power plants during that time and understand the core differences that clean energy through solar bring, and that is a win-win for our environment and our communities. I have made a lifelong career out of working one job after another. I have been able to support my family and share with them the economic benefits of working through Local 212. I have had employer-provided health insurance and a pension that I look forward to, all because of the IBW and the energy industry here in Ohio. Over this same time, I have witnessed a shift in energy generation. As business manager, I am now working to secure clean energy opportunities for my members, like the Energex solar project in Mount Orb, Ohio, currently being installed by March Equipment and Mayor's Electric, a couple of our signatory contractors here in Cincinnati. This project has allowed our members to work directly in the communities in which they live and has allowed the IBW to recruit new members from within those communities. Just last week, IBW Local 575 in Portsmouth, Ohio, participated in a groundbreaking for the New Market Solar Project. It's a Hecate project that will employ around 160 individuals in Highland County, just to the east of Cincinnati, and supply power to Cincinnati's energy aggregation program. The IBW consistent, professional, and skilled workforce has been on display throughout Ohio for years, and I am proud of the relationships we are building with developers in the renewable energy sector, especially in Ohio. The IBW has kept up with the shift in energy generation by constantly assessing and evolving its training programs. As business manager, I also sit as a committee member for our training center. I am part of making sure the IBW members are trained on the latest and greatest technologies, and more of those technologies are directly related to clean energy. There are 20 IBW local unions in Ohio with training centers, where apprentices and journeymen are being trained just like I have been over the last 29 years. With all the proposed solar installations over the next 5 years in Ohio, with the commitments being made federally and statewide to renewable energy, electric vehicles, electric vehicle charging stations, and battery storage, I believe that the opportunities before us right here in Ohio for Ohioans are limitless. When commitments are made, even at the local level, when you sign the Ohio 30/30 pledge, you are invigorating our economy. Speaking of which, Ohio's pilot program is something else the IBW proudly supports. The pilot program's 80% residency requirement ensures the work being done in Ohio will be done by Ohio residents. The 30/30 pledge, coupled with the residency requirement of the pilot program, is directly benefiting our communities. I personally believe if we all listen to each other, the elected officials, developers, contractors, unions, property owners, community members, and the interest groups or trade associations like the Ohio Farm Bureau, and work together to find a common ground to keep moving forward, pivoting when necessary, to embrace the opportunities before us, the future for jobs, the economy, and renewable energy in Ohio is bright. Thanks for giving me this opportunity to speak today. I really do appreciate it.
Yes, thank you, Rick. And Jeff, as we were just listening to Rick, of course, talking about constantly evolving training programs to make sure that workers are ready for this industry. And you as a business owner, what has been your experience as a business owner working on renewable energy projects in Ohio?
Yeah. From the business perspective, this is classic supply and demand. And as the demand rises, the wages are going up, the benefits are going up, the packages are going up. And companies like Third Sun Solar and many others are actively recruiting. And we're competing with labor all over the place in terms of carpenters and cement and contractors. Construction is booming. And so we're basically trying to be as competitive as possible. More than that, we're reaching out into some non-traditional pools of labor and potential employees. We're working actively with the cities and recruiting. We're partnering with some job training organizations that hopefully will create great opportunities for people to enter this industry, which I think is a fantastic opportunity to earn money, bring in living wages and benefits to those communities where a lot of times poverty is a terrible story that we hear over and over again. There's organizations in Cincinnati and Cleveland and in Columbus, probably many other groups are focused on clean energy jobs as a way for their local members and the local community to ride this clean energy wave. It's a fantastic opportunity that we're all excited about in Ohio right now.
I think that keyword is opportunity. And Rick, I have a follow-up question. We just have about a minute left, but why is it so critical that the rapidly growing solar industry, the clean energy industry, maintains a close relationship with labor?
Well, it's the jobs that we bring in apprentices every year, of course. Cincinnati brings in about 120 apprentices every year. It's a 5-year program, but these energy jobs, they learn a lot on both sides, the AC and the DC side of electrical theory. They're able to continue that training through the 5 years of apprenticeship and then past that. Gives them a lifelong career. It's just not a job you go to, and once that job's finished, you go and you find something else that you might like to do. It's a career. Most of us put in 35 to 40 years in this career, and it helps the communities, especially if you're able to bring minority inclusion into it in certain communities. It just helps the community as a whole.
All right, Jeff with Third Sun Solar and Rick from the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. Thank you guys for your time today and your insight. So as today we mentioned earlier, many cities are already taking those bold steps to reducing their carbon footprint. Euclid on the east side of Cleveland is one of those. Take a look at this quick video highlighting the city's efforts to build a clean energy infrastructure.
We became a Power Clean Future Ohio community as a way to expand our sustainability efforts in the city and to fill in where federal and state leadership has failed and be able to take acts locally in order to combat climate change. So we have solar panels on municipal rooftops and at our library. Certain companies throughout our industrial corridor have installed wind turbines that power the facilities. We're working on LED streetlight conversion along our longest corridors throughout the city. It is a way that we can continue to build community, to change perceptions about past policies and programs that haven't supported clean energy goals or haven't supported the fight against climate change.
We became a Power Clean Future community so that we could show our residents and businesses that we are committed for a strong future for Euclid. It's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day work of running a city, but it's so important that we think long-term, that we really, we're committed to a strong future for our kids, and that Euclid will have a high quality of life for the longer. Euclid has been a part of big projects and little projects, so things like solar panels and wind turbines, redoing our wastewater treatment plant, also converting to LED lights, looking at energy efficiency, but also to the small everyday things like recycling and educating our residents. We want to make sure that our community is strong, our environment is strong for years to come. And so from a sustainability standpoint, anything we can do to reduce our the carbon footprint here will help us for years and generations to come. I just want to thank Power a Clean Future. They've been so easy to work with, and the community's coming together. We know we'll get more done when we all work together.
All right, that was Euclid, Ohio. I'm telling you, when I moved to Northeast Ohio, one of my biggest goals was to find the best beaches, and Euclid has one of the best beaches. They got a great Cleveland sign. That's one you definitely want to hit up. All right, so Euclid is an emerging leader for its clean energy and sustainability efforts, and the city recently made the hashtag Ohio 30 by 30 pledge. We're so excited to have them in the PCFO network of communities. Euclid's Mayor Kristen Holzheimer has challenged other cities to make the hashtag Ohio 30 by 30 pledge, and several have already committed. Thank you for making the commitment to a brighter future. Now, hopefully we can count on other city leaders to make that pledge as well. The Ohio 30 by 30 pledge is your public commitment to reducing your city's carbon emissions by 30% by 2030, in 9 years. We believe that this goal is attainable for all of Ohio's cities, and we want you to help achieve it as well. Go to powercleanfuture.org/pledge to make that pledge. So once you commit, we'll come right alongside you with tools and resources to put your words into action. Don't delay making that pledge. Our environment, our health, and our economic well-being need your leadership and your voice at the table. Share your commitment as well on social media with hashtag Ohio 30 by 30. So it's great seeing such impactful efforts across Ohio. And next, we're going to hear from some speakers that each come to the table for different reasons, but share the same passion for meaningful action on climate change and clean energy. Our own stories help shape this moment, and I'm no exception. Speaking personally as a meteorologist, I have to deliver information to my community on weather platforms and trends every day. And climate change makes a big impact on the weather, especially here in Northeast Ohio. So I'm really passionate about this work. And from an academic perspective, the science on climate change is clear. We know our communities will feel the brunt of more extreme weather patterns than I'm seeing with my own eyes. For example, flooding events are becoming more often across Ohio. Just going to be happening across the eastern United States, but especially here in the Great Lakes. And so for our last listening segment, and continue with this theme of sharing our own motivations on the why behind this work, we're being joined by three voices sharing their perspective on climate change and what's at stake. Jenny Williams, an Alliance for Climate Education Fellow, Rick Stockberger, President and CEO at Bright Energy Innovators, and Pastor Dean Van Vero of Calvary Reformed Church in Cleveland. They're here to share their perspectives on Ohio's clean energy future. I'll ask each of you to take a few minutes to share your own story and why you care so deeply about these issues. Pastor Dean, I'd like to start with you.
Dean, you are muted still.
All right, sorry about that. Hi from the North Coast. I just wanted to say, for me, that climate action emerges out of my faith. We believe that God created the world good and beautiful. I have a 75-year-old pin oak in my backyard that provides shade for 3 homes and our church building as well. And it's just so beautiful. Where I sit today is about a mile from Lake Erie, the 11th largest lake, freshwater lake in the world. So God created everything good, but sin has corrupted it. But God didn't give up. He came to relieve our sin problem on the cross. And when he rose from the dead, it wasn't just, personal redemption for him, but it was redemption, the first act of his restoration and redemption project. So, for example, human-induced climate change is not what he intended it to be. My wife and I have 3 kids, and they're going to be saddled with this problem. So Christians are involved in climate action. The tree canopy here in Cleveland is down to, I think, 18%. We all know that they are God's best, carbon capturers. So Christians here in Cleveland are involved in tree planting efforts. So I'm part of a group that really inspires me. It's called the West Side Creation Care Team. It's a collaborative of local churches of many denominations getting together to work on, climate action as well as other issues as well. And so, again, it emerges out of our faith that God is restoring the world, and we get to participate in that work with him.
Thank you, Pastor Dean. We're going to go next to Rick Stockberger, President and CEO at Bright Energy Innovators. I want you to share your story.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. And, I think my day job is, we're President and CEO of Bright Energy Innovators, and we get to bring new technologies to market in the clean tech space every single day, and it's amazing work. But also personally, I happen to be a conservative, and I think that's another reason that I was brought on here. And Dean, I just want to focus on the Christianity aspect. The Bible starts with God created the heavens and the earth, and not God created Walmart. And so, knowing that we're here to be able to take care of that creation is extremely important to me. My three reasons, though, as a conservative personally, is number one, national security. Our reliance on fossil fuels, frankly, makes us weak to the rest of the world. Tony Frazone from Czar Power, one of our portfolio companies, and myself both served in Afghanistan for a couple of years, and seeing that the majority of the attacks on U.S. soldiers in the Middle East happens on fuel convoys. While we have this big thing in the heavens called the sun that can power our technologies there. My second point is American competitiveness. We've been known as a country of innovators, people that start new technologies and bring them to market. And frankly, right now we're losing. We're losing in the clean energy space, specifically to China. And if we are going to be in a competitive America, in the future-facing technologies that are going to be a big part of this world, we need to make sure that we're investing in those future-facing technologies that are going to move us forward. And third is the moonshot to me. My generation's gift to our children should be cheap, abundant, renewable, and reliable energy. I just firmly believe that, a couple generations before they went to the moon, and it was amazing to see that we were able to get there. I want my children to have an amazing Earth, and I want to make sure that I play a role in giving that to them. I don't want to give our children what the generation before me gave us, which was massive college debt, a housing market collapse, and forever wars over oil. So to me, it's our moonshot, and my generation needs to solve that for the next one.
Rick, thank you for that. Next up, we have Jenny Williams, once again, an Alliance for Climate Education Fellow. What's your perspective on Ohio's clean energy future?
Well, thank you for having me. I wanted to start talking about when I began to be involved in climate action. So I began to be involved in climate action in the 7th grade. This was a very pivotal year for me as I gained my footing in activism, and I began to take a lot of action in my own community. So in this year, I worked with my fellow peers who were also passionate about climate change, and we talked to our city council, we contacted politicians, and we even created an environmental event in Hudson, which is the town I'm from. And looking back through all this activism, I was very driven by protecting the earth, but mainly myself from future harm. So I think now, looking back, my perspective on climate change and the reasons I was fighting for it were a little naive. I was mainly focused on myself, and I feel as though my activism was very self-centered. So now, in comparison to 7th grade, it was 3 years ago, my understanding of intersectionality between climate change, racial justice, socioeconomic justice, gender equality, basically every single issue has grown immensely. And now I feel as though my passion and my drive for climate change action and climate justice isn't necessarily driven by my own fear anymore, but driven by my passion for justice. So as my activism was self-centered, I cared about the way that this issue would affect me and not the way it would affect others. So as I said before, climate justice is an issue that is mainly centered in racial justice, socioeconomic justice, and gender equality. And these are huge issues in America today. There are huge issues embedded systematically in the systems in America. And we can see that climate change affects these different groups of people, people who deal with racial justice issues, people who deal with socioeconomic issues, people who deal with gender equality issues. It affects them unproportionately. So I think it's important to remember throughout our fight for climate justice, throughout our fight for climate change, is how different topics in climate justice is so intertwined. I believe that you can't fight for climate justice or fighting for climate action without also fighting for racial justice, socioeconomic justice, gender equality issues. And the same way around, you can't effectively fight for racial justice, you can't effectively fight for socioeconomic justice or gender equality without taking into account climate justice. So here's a really quick example of the way that climate change disproportionately affects POC and poor communities. So around the world and in America, we can see like internationally the outsourcing of jobs and countries being exploited for their oil creates a lot of pollution and environmental issues for those countries, and especially poor countries. And in America, in our own cities, people who live near fracking sites or large cities or oil drilling or carbon factories, coal factories, anything like that, we can see that they are way more susceptible to health issues such as asthma, cancer, strokes, heart attacks. And another example of how, a more specific example of how climate change can affect communities, not just physically, but also mentally, is the indigenous people in our country. So a lot of Native Americans, a lot of Native American reservations will have fracking sites very close to them because they have available land and the government exploits it. And Native Americans are often subject to their land being exploited. And through this, we can see that the rates of kidnapping, sexual assault, abuse, and rape have gone up significantly in these communities. So when we have these fracking sites near Native American communities, Native American and indigenous women are more susceptible to being kidnapped, abused, sexually assaulted, or raped. And this is a huge issue in America. And I feel as though it's a very, very good example of the interconnectedness of gender equality, socioeconomic justice, racial justice, and climate change.
I think you guys are, yes, thank you, Jenny. You all are spot on in the interconnectedness, and we each had different views on this. Jenny, you talked about the equity for all people. Rick, you talked about the competitiveness for the United States. And then Pastor Dean, you talked about just having our creation be beautiful once again and trying to keep that for us. Now, we're running out of time, but Rick, I had a really quick question for you as we continue to move on, but just a couple moments here. Rick, you talked about the competitiveness for the United States, but specifically for Ohio. Do we have a shot at trying to compete with other states that you hear on the national news like California? Where does Ohio rank in that, and can we lead the nation on this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that are going on actually in DC that can help Ohio a lot is the Endless Frontier Act. So I'm actually located right here in what we call the Voltage Valley, where the new GM LG Chem battery plant is being built, as well as Lordstown Motors. And we see an opportunity for the U.S. supply chain to grow here and grow here quickly. So Ohio has a very, very important role to play from a supply chain standpoint that will make us competitive, not just with the rest of the states, but the rest of the world. In Ohio, we've built the rest of the country and the rest of the world through steel and other items. We can build the future of clean energy right here in Ohio by locating manufacturing right next to innovation.
Thank you, guys. Jenny, Pastor Dean, and Rick, thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Appreciate y'all.
All right, so discussions in Athens, Ohio have served as a great example of this as well. Take a look at what the city has been able to accomplish by working together.
You know, prior to learning about Power Clean Future Ohio, in 2017, when we learned that the U.S. was going to be leaving the Paris Climate Accord, we continued to want to honor and adhere to the tenets of the the climate accord. And so we went on that path, actually passed a resolution in City Council that we were going to continue down the path of reducing our carbon emissions and honoring the Paris Climate Accord. And then we somehow stumbled upon Power Clean Future Ohio and started engaging and learning more and looking at some of the different products and programs that PCFO had, and the rest is really kind of clicked for us. The carbon fee, as we call it, is a fee that we know is going to generate about $100,000 to $110,000 a year here in the city of Athens. And we do have a slate of projects that we're looking at to where we can be using that money to go towards. One example is that we're well on the way to having a 2.5 megawatt solar array deployed down by our wastewater treatment plant and our community center, two of our biggest energy consumers in the city of Athens. And part of us being able to pay for a solar array of that size could be this, or will be this carbon fee. You know, PCFO offers so many amazing tools and programs for people to apply for. We're going through an EV audit as we speak. We also were able to be selected as one of the few cities that is going to have equity coaching when it comes to solar projects, sustainability projects, but also equity projects for our citizens here in Athens. And then it's the other thing that PCFO provides to communities is just being a sounding board and a repository of what other communities are doing, both large and small. Some projects are just amazing and you're always thinking, how do I scale that to the size of Athens? But I think most of us who are members of PCFO do the same thing. And the members of PCFO right now are amazing. And you look around and they're all truly doing some really cool things, but everyone's doing things a little bit differently. But the intent is to truly reduce our carbon emission footprints. With everything that we've got going on here in the city of Athens, I truly believe that we could get to 50 by 30 as opposed to 30 by 30. But I encourage everyone to take this pledge, every council to put forward a resolution, because at the end of the day, we are trying to protect our own communities, right? So this is a way in which you can do it by signing on to the 30 by 30 pledge, or do what I'm doing and push that envelope and make it 50 by 30.
By 30. Overachievers there, right? No, that's great. It's wonderful. Great things to see in Athens, Ohio. All right. So another great way to get involved is joining coalitions and other groups advocating for policy change. The Ohio Climate Justice Fund is one of them. I'd like to invite Leah Hudnall, the director of the Ohio Climate Justice Fund, to share about her organization and how they're working at the intersection of racial justice and climate action in the Cleveland area. Launched with seed funding and support from the George Gund Foundation, Energy Foundation, and the Cleveland Foundation, the OCJF advances accessible community education and community listening efforts centered on creating a sustainable, equitable future for Ohio. Leah is a large advocate for listening to the communities in which we work and serve and looking for ways to address their needs.
The Ohio Climate Justice Fund was a concept that was birthed out of the response from philanthropic partners across the nation after they watched the social unrest from racial injustice that seemed to peak in the summer of 2020 and the havoc that COVID-19 wreaked over our communities and our nation as a whole. Many of these philanthropic partners decided to increase their payout in the summer and spring of 2020, and one of those included the George Gund Foundation. What started as an idea to fund at the intersection of racial justice, democracy, and climate has now resulted in an emerging and fresh new initiative called the Ohio Climate Justice Fund. We're so excited to be in partnership with several organizations who will apply as our first grantee cohort to host community listening sessions across Ohio to really invest in the voices and lived experience of Ohioans and engage them in conversations about clean energy, climate, and public utilities. Oftentimes, we talk about what Ohioans need and what we're fighting on behalf of them for. But I would ask all of us to consider, when is the last time we've actually asked anyone what they thought about the things that we're doing? And so now with the Ohio Climate Justice Fund, we're putting investment in that effort. We want to hear from everyday Ohioans and ask them, have they ever had to choose a public utility bill over groceries or over some other bill? We want to ask individuals what they think about an emerging new economy around clean energy jobs. How do they consider their air quality in their zip code and in their neighborhood? All of these issues are of importance to all of us. However, historically, several communities have been excluded from the conversation. But environmental justice and climate justice is not new to many of our communities. And so we hope with the Ohio Climate Justice Fund, we can be a community translator between folks who have been advocating for years and residents, and really create a powerful coalition to make change here in Ohio.
All right, we appreciate Leah for that. Next up, we're heading to one of our founding PCFO cities, one of my favorite cities in Ohio, Lakewood. Watch this.
I'm Tristan Rader, Councilman at Large here in Lakewood, Ohio, and I've been doing this for about 3.5 years, coming up on my fourth full year in City Council. And in this role, I've been sort of fortunate to serve as the chair of the Public Works and Sustainability Committee. I came to council with a plan and a vision to really help my city, my community, reach a new level of environmentalism, a new level of sustainability, and a new level of resiliency. It really is up to us as local communities to lead the way. We have lots of opportunity and resources to put solar on our buildings like we've done here in Lakewood, Ohio. Lakewood became a Power a Clean Future community because we just really believe strongly that cities need to do their part and have to be the front lines of the environmental movement, and also the front lines of just adopting clean energy. If we're going to get there, it has to be at the city level. We decided to join pretty early on, and they've been just a great resource to help us to get to some of those goals and to share with us what other cities are doing, so we can connect and figure out what the next steps are to get us to our energy future, right? One of the things that I brought to council and I'm really most proud of in terms of clean energy for our city is our commitment to 100% renewable energy by 2025 for our city and for 2035 for all of our residents. Also, I'm very proud that we've made some steps in that direction by purchasing clean energy through NOPEC for all of our city meters, all 77 of our city meters, which include our street lights, and in all government buildings. I'm also very proud that we were able to adopt solar on our roofs through a program with the county, Cuyahoga County, that allows us to put solar on at least 4 of our structures right now, about 650 kilowatts of solar all together. People in Ohio support renewable energy, and they want their local leaders to lead the way. They want people that are willing to take the lead. As community leaders, we just need to take their lead and follow where they're going and be the champion of their cause. And we don't have a choice. We have to get out front. Our Earth depends on it. There's no planet B, right? We've all heard that. So I just really encourage anyone who's out there today who's thinking about becoming a member of Powering Clean Future Ohio to do it, because this is just a great, easy first step towards getting a plan together to really move into the future of energy for your constituents, for your city, for the planet.
All right, so we are so proud of Lakewood. Also, next time you're in Lakewood, if you haven't been, you got to check out the solstice steps. And coming up June 20th is the summer solstice. The sun sets right over Lake Erie, right in front of the sets. It's amazing. All right, so it's exciting to see the rooftop solar facility and other efforts that are creating jobs in the city around clean energy. Now I'd like to introduce Heather Measley, Executive Director of the Ohio Environmental Council, to introduce our keynote speaker. Thanks for being with us today, Heather.
Thanks, Matt. The Ohio Environmental Council is proud to work with our partners across the state to support Power a Clean Future Ohio and this week's Ohio Clean Energy Summit. To secure a healthier environment for all who call Ohio home, it is critical that we invest in bold climate action at all levels of government. With that in mind, it is a privilege to introduce our keynote speaker for today's event, Shara Mahadi. Shara Mahadi is the Chief of Staff of the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy at the U.S. Department of Energy. As a principal member of the office's senior leadership team, she leads strategic planning, communications, and the immediate office supporting the Assistant Secretary in advancing the office's mission. Before being appointed to the Chief of Staff position, Shara focused her career on advising policymakers and international organizations on mitigating climate change and advancing clean energy policies. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Heather. Thanks all for having me, and I hope you hear me all right. I wish I could be with you, all of you in person, but we still have a bit of a pandemic going on. So I hope in the future there's an opportunity for us to be all together. So I wanted to take the time today to talk with you first about how the Department of Energy is translating the Biden administration's clean energy priorities into the work we do, the funding that we give out. I'll start with talking about Department of Energy, and then I'll get more specifically into what we're thinking about now day to day in the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy, where I serve as the Chief of Staff. And then I think the last part I'll speak briefly about, which will probably be the most interesting, is how we're thinking about expanding our engagement with local governments. I think it's notable that many of us, including myself, have pretty deep backgrounds coming from state government and local government as well. And so I'll talk specifically about a few projects we have in Ohio. So with that, starting talking about Department of Energy. So Department of Energy is really one of the backbone agencies essential to President Biden's execution of the climate mission. On the one hand, we continue to be the foremost funders in the United States of research and early stage research and development to really push the frontiers of science and engineering to tackle the climate crisis and also bring down the costs of different types of renewable energies. And on the other hand, we're now shifting to a place where we want to be catalyzing and providing the opportunity space for more and more clean energy jobs through demonstrations and deployment activity. And it's an area that is frankly a newer emphasis for the Department of Energy that we're very excited to share with you. So again, for decades, DOE has been at the forefront in investing in innovative renewable energy and energy efficiency technologies on behalf of the American people. But now the time is right to realize the returns on those investments that we've made over many decades and getting these energy solutions quickly into the marketplace and at scale and make them commercially viable, which we successfully have with land-based wind, with solar, and with a number of other clean energy technologies that we support, and I'll get a bit more into. So at a high level, Department of Energy leverages the expertise of its different program offices and 17 national labs. And again, we continue to pursue innovations in fields like battery storage, electric vehicles, advanced building technologies, and more. We also have an interesting loan office. We have substantial loan authority at the Department of Energy, in which Congress has, for many years now, allowed us to issue federal loans to American companies to offset some of the risk of getting to more sort of commercially viable clean energy, for example, for clean energy technologies and manufacturing, amongst other DOE priorities. And ultimately, a lot of our resources go towards this one goal of enabling state and local governments to more effectively deploy clean energy and efficiency solutions. And we all know, as you all have shared today, and that localities are at the front lines of the permitting and siting and deployment opportunity set that there is with clean energy. And so now let me get a little bit more specific into my office, EERE. It's kind of a mouthful, but the Energy Efficiency Renewable Energy Office. So our mission is, and we're just working now on a new mission statement for this administration. Our mission is to drive, again, the research, development, demonstration, and deployment of innovative practices that will help us transition to a 100% clean energy economy no later than 2050 and ensure that this clean energy economy benefits all Americans. So we're focused on 5 key areas in this administration at EERE. Decarbonizing the grid, which we plan to do with a goal of 2035 of 100% clean grid. Decarbonizing the transportation sector while expanding mobility options for all Americans. Decarbonizing energy-intensive industries, and that includes manufacturing. Reducing the carbon footprint significantly of buildings, and decarbonizing agriculture where it relates to all of the above. And again, these are sort of the 5 programmatic priorities we're putting in place that are guiding our research, our funding opportunities, our technical assistance that I'll get more into in a moment, and all of our policy making as we transition to this clean energy economy. Our work is also driven by a number of principles. And I shared one of those principles, which is really enabling state and local governments to have even more of an ability and enabling ability to deploy these clean energy technologies. And another principle is largely driven by environmental justice, which we just heard about from my fellow speaker. We have to build the clean energy economy in a way that benefits all Americans. And we need to address environmental injustices that disproportionately affect communities of color, low-income communities, Indigenous communities. The success of this transition to a clean energy economy also depends on a diverse workforce and a strong workforce. And we have to ensure that the different workforces behind the clean energy economy also look like America. And so a lot of our, the way that we think about our future investments at EERE stems from these sorts of principles. And so, for example, we are going to start strongly suggesting and then likely requiring diversity, inclusion, and equity plans for all applicants for future funding opportunities. We're also increasing partnerships with minority-serving institutions and professional organizations. We're committed to growing our funding for more collegiate competitions and workforce training opportunities that create a pipeline of very good paying jobs. Now, in sort of closing, I want to run through a few DOE collaborations specifically in Ohio. We know, again, that we cannot transition to this clean energy economy without collaborating with other federal agencies, national labs, state, local, tribal governments, and industry partners. And that's why the work you all do at the local level is so incredibly important. EERE provides funding, technical assistance, workforce development training, STEM educational opportunities to enable this transition. So currently, we have 37 active projects in Ohio. Collectively, that's over $330 million in Ohio. And we've worked with a number of the recipients of this funding have included state government, small businesses, universities, nonprofits, and energy companies. So for example, in Columbus, well, let me step back for a moment. There's a program called the Clean Cities Coalition Network. There's 75 of these coalitions around the country that we fund. And this is specifically on clean transportation. We consider these 75 coalitions the movers and shakers, the boots on the ground, who work then with municipalities and communities in that state in which they're located to help them adopt advanced vehicle technologies. So for example, right here in Columbus, there's an organization that if you haven't heard of, I recommend you reach out to, called Clean Fuels Ohio. Clean Fuels Ohio brings together communities across Ohio and provides DOE resource and other resources to them. So for example, they could work with you to assess your transportation needs, help develop project proposals such as grant writing for further funding, and help manage funded projects. There's another DOE program that's prominent in Ohio called SoulSmart. It's a national designation program where we recognize cities, counties that are doing really forward-looking thinking and how to develop a more mature local solar market. And designees of Soul Smart, and there's 9 communities in Ohio that are currently Soul Smart communities, have access to our technical assistance through that program to get even further into their work. So I highly recommend that you go to our website, DOE EERE Technical Assistance. We have all the different options for how we can get technical assistance to your communities depending on what you're looking for. So with that, I think I may have gone over time, but I'm very grateful for all of your leadership. And I think together, there's no other way to do it other than working hand in hand to secure the clean energy future. So thanks for having me, and happy to answer any questions.
About 6, 7, 8 minutes for a couple of questions that we'd like to ask you. But first, really quick, some of the resources that you just talked about, Clean Fuels Ohio, Soul Smart, they can all be found on our website on the PCFO. So make sure you check those out. But Shara, we wanted to ask you some questions. You specifically talked a lot about funding. That could be one of the big issues or hurdles that these communities face. So can local governments expect any more federal resources to help them accelerate that transition to a clean energy economy?
Sure. Thanks, Matt, for the question. And I'm really glad that folks can access all those Ohio communities, and folks can access the resources on your website. So the answer is absolutely yes. So first of all, right now, as I just mentioned, we have a number of different programs from, if you're interested in anything from exploring building geothermal in your community, perhaps if you have the geological, the right makeup for that, to bringing in, electric vehicle fleets to your municipality, to again land-based wind projects, maybe even offshore wind in Lake Erie, but that's up to you all. And so there's a number of resources on the website that I highly recommend you look into. And just for example, DOE many times will actually deploy staff from the national laboratories to communities to help them sort of solve a specific problem. We've sent a number of different staff in that way to communities, and working in some cases for weeks or months on end to help build a clean energy deployment plan and then actually help execute on it. So that's on the one hand. I think on the other hand, right now the Biden administration has proposed the American Jobs Plan to Congress, and in the American Jobs Plan, there's a sort of long fact sheet on the White House website, but you'll see references to block grants that would specifically be directed to states, to tribes, and cities. And if the American Jobs Plan, as Congress ends up crafting it, and if it's passed, that will be one of the most sort of historically significant. We will never have seen that level of support at the local level for clean energy deployment. And so to the extent that you all are engaged with your members of Congress and would be interested in working with them on developing out what that legislation could look like, that will be one of the biggest injections into local governments that we've ever seen. So that's also sort of looking to the future if passed. Oh, Matt, you're on mute.
We've all done it now, I guess. Hey, so Shara, thank you for also bringing up the jobs bill, infrastructure bill. I'm going through some of the questions that people have submitted, and so that we want to ask you. And one of those has been just how local governments can take advantage of possibly that future funding opportunity. Is there anything, I know you've talked a little bit about on the local sense, looking forward to some of that bill to be passed. What could be possibly some more real life examples that you could see in Ohio that if this bill is passed, what we could look forward to?
Sure. So, I mean, first of all, the details. So just in terms of the process, the White House put out this fact sheet that I do recommend you all take a look at. And now the details are really up to Congress. So the administration laid out some high-level priorities, and so I think working with members of Congress, and ensuring that the recipients of, again, so let me be specific, like block grants are one mechanism that often the funding goes directly from, let's say, DOE, could go directly from DOE to a municipality. During the 2009 financial crisis, some of you may recall who worked in city government at the time, that the stimulus funding, the recovery funding that was provided under the Recovery Act included a program, for example, called the Energy Efficiency Block Grant Program. The acronym is EECBG, and I don't know if that is the type of program that might come back or not, but that was a program that directly funded over 2,000 communities in the U.S. Directly from Department of Energy to give them the funds to work on energy efficiency and weatherization programs in their communities. And so I think, again, block grants are one mechanism that through the American Jobs Plan is a way that municipalities can access funding. Now, Jobs Plan is not passed, and there's a lot of hurdles to get there. And so, folks sort of showing their support and working with the members of Congress is an important step.
And coming from a meteorologist standpoint and looking at Ohio is an interesting place because we've got some great sunshine, especially when you head towards the western part of the state. We've got some pockets for geothermal right along the eastern border, Beale County, Trumbull County. And so we got so many opportunities. Wind energy, like you said, Lake Erie. So many opportunities. You see some windmills on the east side of Cleveland and other parts of Ohio.
Awesome.
So we're excited to continue to push that. But how do we ensure that a transition to clean energy works for everyone and doesn't perpetuate the same iniquities that have been built into the system for years?
Yep, it's an incredibly important question, and frankly, one that most of the Biden administration appointees, we spend a lot of our days thinking about. And so, so first of all, the Biden administration has a policy in place called Justice 40, where 40% of the funding that we will end up spending in this administration towards clean energy has to benefit historically under-resourced communities. And that could include, for example, environmental justice communities that I discussed earlier, that because of historical issues of discrimination, for example, may have been cited in a place that has really profound pollution levels that aren't experienced by local neighboring communities. And I think it's really, when we look at, for example, where solar energy is, solar panels and solar energy is often deployed today, there are studies that show that often it is disproportionately in more higher income sort of white communities. And so we have to change that equation. And that tone is being set at the very top, in which we're going to be looking at every dollar we spend and the communities in which that are benefiting or not, and changing that math from the federal standpoint. I think in addition to that, so that's frankly one of the biggest things on our mind. And I think the second thing is, when we look at the benefit, like when we look at the opportunity set between like rural and urban communities as well, like let's take clean transportation. When we think of clean transportation, folks often think, okay, that means electric vehicles, and that means electrifying our transportation system. And while that's true, we cannot just be promoting electric vehicles without promoting just expanded mobility options as well in the United States. And so we are funding. And so, for example, actually in Ohio, we have a project in the southeast of the country, in a small town of 3,000 people called the Plains, in which we're working with them to develop a rural mobility action plan, and then working with them to implement that action plan. So how can we get electric vehicles to make sense in Appalachia, Ohio, better understand the operating conditions, better understand how we can sort of use that pilot to then adopt electric vehicles in rural communities, and also more sort of mass transit electric options in those communities. So I'll stop there.
Shara, thank you so much for your time. We've had people talking from the local level now all the way to the federal level, and we really appreciate you giving us our keynote address. Thank you so much, Shara. What a great way to end this summit. But before we go, I'd like to turn it over to Joe for one last big question. And what can people do today after today's summit? Joe?
Thank you, Matt. And I want to send my personal thanks to Shara Matadi from the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy for sharing her thoughts today, along with all of our speakers, for sharing their why behind this work. Too often we attend summits like these, we leave the event, we close the window, we learn a lot, but the work stops. The topics of the summit are too important to let that happen today. That's why I want to take a moment to encourage everyone to make an action plan inspired by what you heard from our speakers and help your community build a clean energy future with us. Reach out to your mayor, your city council, your county commissioners. Ask them what they are doing to reduce emissions and grow clean energy jobs locally. Encourage them to join Power Clean Future Ohio. If you are an elected official, make the Ohio 30 by 30 pledge. For those who've already made the pledge, thank you. Share your pledge with your constituents on social media. Help build the growing momentum we are seeing across the state. And challenge other cities to take action as well. Join for future programming, including the next webinar on sustainability planning and federal stimulus funds on June 17th at 2 p.m. More information to come on that. For our advocate attendees, make your voice heard and demand that real, just, equitable change can and should occur at the local level. Stay up to date on local and state policies, share important information with friends, family, and colleagues, and continue to be active in critical conversations. On behalf of Power Clean Future Ohio, know that you are not alone in the fight towards a clean energy future. We are here to support our advocates and policymakers every step of the way. Stay connected with us and look for resources through our newsletters, social media, and our website, poweracleanfuture.org. We look forward to working alongside each of you to build Ohio's clean energy future. Thank you.